So now we're going to research parable a little further. The English parabil, and bil comes from the bull, and the Greek parabole. Now let's study the Latin parabola. And when we look up the etymology of bola, we find the word bolero, and the bola comes from the ball, and the Latin bola, which is why they tell you to see the bull. And then they tell you that bola comes from the bolero jacket, because the bolero jacket is worn by the El Matador, the torero, the bullfighter, the jacket worn by the Taurus bullfighter. And then we have the bolero Latin ball dance, and notice her right hand in the air, which is exactly like the torero bullfighter with his right hand in the air. Exactly like Baal with his right hand in the air. So now you know why they do the high L, Hitler's salute, in the air, and the Sal is the sun, and the Ut is also the sun, and this comes from the ancient Roman salute of the high L. And of course, the swastika is the symbol of the sun, thus the runic rune of the sun, which looks like the lightning bolt or the S, thus the symbol that Zeus holds up in his right hand. Now, believe it or not, when you look up the etymology of ballet, which comes from the ball, you'll notice that the ballet dancers hold up their right hand, and they wear the jacket of the bolero. And the art of ballet comes from the art of fencing. Thus, the fencing artist has his hand in the air. So the fencing comes from the defense, from defending oneself from an animal or outside forces, thus the sword, and the dance of the fencer and the dance of the ballet artist, as well as the dance of the bullfighter. And when a bull viciously attacks, it gives us our word terror, which is absolutely terrible. The terror of the bull. And this puts people in fear, which is why they tremble, because they don't want to get torn by the Taurus horn, which is exactly why we have the word horrible, the horror of the bull. And speaking of the horror of the whole, from the horny horns of the bull, it brings us to the whore, which is the goddess, which is why her uterus is the labyrinth, the uterus of the bull, which is exactly where you will find the Minotaur, the Taurus bull. And the symbol of the Taurus, or the Minotaur, is the double-sided axe of the Minotaur, which is known as a labrius, which comes from the labia of the goddess, her two-sided or double-sided lips, which is exactly why it's called the labia of the labyrinth and the menorah, or the men of the Taurus bull, the Minotaur. So now you'll understand the descent into Pan's labyrinth, which is the labyrinth of the goddess whole. And that's exactly why when you go to a church, which means the sacred hole or the sacred circle of the goddess, you'll notice the symbolism of the vagina, which is exactly why when you enter into a church, you go through the double doorway of the goddess, and her double-sided lips of her labia minora. And this is why the female anatomy is known as the bulb of the vestibule, or the vestibule, which is exactly why she has the clitoris. And by the way, men are attracted to the female buttocks, which is why we say butt-ox from the bullocks, or the bullock, which is why the buttock is the buttocks. Which brings us to the whore who rides the beast, the whore who rides the bull, which brings us to the bull of Wall Street. Remember that I told you that ballet comes from the Baal, or the bull of Baal? So perhaps now you'll understand the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was by the Illuminati, which is why they have the whore who rides the beast, or the bull, and of course she is the ballet dancer. So anyway, the double-edged sword, or the two lips of the labrius, is the two lips of the labia of the goddess, which is why we have Libra, which is the two, or the balance of the scales from the above world to the underworld, the two seasons that are divided from good and evil, heaven and hell. And Libra is why we have the goddess of justice, or just ice, because she is the goddess, or the god of ice, which is exactly why we have the symbolism of the white witch, who stands for the symbolism of winter, the death white witch of winter. This is why we have the goddess who bears the light for the underworld, and she's known as the goddess of liberty, the statue of liberty with her right hand in the air, exactly like Baal. And Baal is Bel, which is why we have the liberty bell. And that's why all churches ring the liberty bell. And perhaps now you will understand the legend of the Bell Witch, which is why the goddess of ice is the goddess in white, which is the meaning of Bell. So now you'll understand why Libra the goddess holds the scales of justice, which is the scales of balance, Baal. Because we're talking about the balance of Baal, the sun, between the two seasons of winter and summer, the two bulls. So like I said, this is why we have Jacob and Esau, the two bulls who are fighting over supremacy of the year, the red or the blue, which is why we have the red and the blue corners in fighting and games, because we are trying to see which side is going to win and take over. And so now you'll understand why we have Bellator fighting, because we're trying to see which bull will win. And by the way, this is why we have a pit bull, because the pit bulls fight in a pit like bulls. And the bulls fight in a pit which is known as the bull ring, which is exactly why fighters in the UFC and Bellator fight in a ring. Exactly like boxing, the two bulls are fighting in a ring, red versus blue, and they fight inside of the box, which is the ring, the box of the ox, the boxing, the bullocks. Thus, the boxer is the ox. And this is why bullfighters fight bulls in the ring. They are known as the torero, or the matador de toros, the master. And by the way, the master comes from the boss, the chief, or the elder, which comes from the bull, the boss, which comes from the bull of heaven, the god of the Milky Way. Thus, the cow or the bull of the stars. Thus, the word master has the word aster in it, which means stars, the astronomical objects in the sky. This is why master gives us our word mast, which is the pole on a ship or a boat, thus the pole that points to the pole star in the sky. So a master is one who has mastered the celestial star of navigation. Thus boats use marine navigation star charts. So Aster gives us words like Ishtar, which means star, or an asterisk, which means the star. Like Ashtarte or Ashtaroth, which is the queen of heaven, or the queen of the Mazaroth. And Asterion and Asterius were the two sacred kings of Crete. So this is why we say that we are astonished, because of the Aster Stella stars that marveled ancient mankind. And you'll notice the goddess Astrea holds the beams of balance, because we're talking about the balance of nature, winter and summer, or day and night. So this is the balance, and Ans means the state of being. The state of being of Baal, which is the sun, thus the seasons. And Baal is the storm god. And when we look at the Hebrew Baal, you'll realize that what it's saying is the house of El, the bull god, Baal. So now you realize that Baal really means the weather, the house of El, the moon and the sun, the seasons, or day and night. So this is where we get our term even. You'll notice it's even between the two, or the opposites, or those that balance one another, the male and the female, the day and the night, or the winter and summer, the eve, on. And you see, this is exactly why the word even has the word Eve in it. Because Eve is the goddess of the underworld, the goddess of the nighttime, the goddess of the abyss. So you see, the goddess is always associated with the moon, which is the time of darkness. So, since ancient times, the goddess has been worshipped and demonized as the goddess of darkness, the goddess of the cave, the goddess of the abyss, because the goddess has the cave or the house of the cave inside her, the sacred hole. And the goddess of the primordial abyss is where we all begin our life. She begins our life in the darkness. Thus we all emerge from the sacred cave of the hole of darkness, and we get born into the light of the world. So you see, the yin and yang symbol has a little bit of darkness in the light and a little bit of light in the darkness. As above, so below. You see, the moon is both black and white. So the moon brings a little light to the darkness, and thus the moon of black and white is why we have the witches or the goddess or the demons that are both black or white. The goddess of the Babel witch, or the goddess of the white witch, and of course the goddesses that are always dressed in black, like Lilith, the goddess of the demons, the goddess of the night, of death. So when the patriarchal man rulership of the world took over the ancient matriarchal goddess worship of the world, they basically demonized the goddess. Thus today we have the woman in black, or the witch, which is dressed all in black and is very evil. or like the goddess Hecate or Hecate, which is exactly why her color is black. And of course the cauldron is black as well.